What's up, everybody? This is Tiana from Straight from the Crates. Today, we are talking about one of the greatest hip hop albums ever made, the Notorious B.I.G.'s Life After Death. This album was released in 1997, 16 days after Biggie was murdered. This double album became one of the most influential rap albums ever made. But listening to it today, in the era of the fall of Diddy, the Epstein files, and the broader exposure of elite exploitation, networks, etc. Some of these songs, they hit very differently. And it raises a question. Was Biggie participating in a culture of excess and moral decay? Or was he documenting it? Or did the system use his voice to normalize it? Let's talk about it. I like to say that the album, to me, it's like a movie. Life After Death isn't just an album. It's basically a crime film in audio form. You've got mafia fantasies, drug dealing stories, strip club culture, power, violence, money, and sex, all wrapped in luxury production from Bad Boy Records. Songs like Somebody's Gotta Die, the 10 Crack Commandments, which is like one of my all time favorites. I Love the Dough, everyone's all time favorite. Mo Money, Mo Problems. These songs paint a picture of wealth, danger, and excess. Biggie was known for cinematic storytelling, taking listeners deep into the criminal underworld of the 90s New York scene. And it was just amazing to hear, especially if you're someone like me who's from, people call it the Midwest, but I like to say up north, from Michigan. Like, this album is like eye opening for somebody who hadn't been to the big city. But there's also another layer because the bad boy era wasn't just street culture, it was an industry culture. Puffy, Power, and the industry machine. At the center of it all was Puff Daddy, later known as Diddy. He executive produced the album and built Bad Boy Records into one of the most powerful labels in hip hop or just in the music industry. He was able to do this by supposedly just working nonstop, having all the ambition in the world. But decades later, the image of the glamorous mogul has been shattered by serious criminal allegations and legal cases involving exploitation and trafficking, and it makes people re examine the environment around Bad Boy Records, especially in the 90s at its peak. Like the luxury, the parties, the access to celebrities, models, and power. In other words, the same type of elite party culture that later became associated with people like Jeffrey Epstein. And that's extremely, crazy. Now, to be clear, there is no evidence Biggie was connected to Epstein type operations. But culturally, the era glorified a lifestyle that blurred the lines between power, money, sex, and control. And Life After Death documents that world. The dark irony of the title itself is Life After Death. It feels almost like he prophesized this because Biggie recorded the album before his murder, yet it was released after he died. And it's just like, how are you supposed to overlook that? So it's like, even on the final song, it sounds like warnings. Like tracks like My Downfall, The Long Kiss Goodnight. If you're nobody till somebody kills you. That's also one of like my all-time favorite songs as well. They sound almost like premonitions of the violence surrounding him. Some critics say that these songs now feel like war songs for the dead. When I heard this, I was just like, are they insane? But it does kind of make sense. It also reminds me of Tupac's last album. Well, last album from when he was alive. But the album becomes something deeper than gangster rap. It becomes a portrait of a system eating its own stars. Was Biggie exposing the system? I don't know. This is where I think the conversation gets interesting because Biggie was always a master storyteller. Sometimes he was the villain, sometimes the observer, sometimes both. On songs like I Got a Story to Tell, he narrates an absurd and morally questionable situation like a professional journalist, but one who's from the streets. So the question becomes, was Biggie celebrating this world, or was he holding up a mirror to it? I don't know. I'd like to think he was holding up a mirror to it. But hip hop has always done both. The industry pattern, when we look back now, we see something unsettling. The 90s hip hop industry was filled with violence, again, exploitation, power struggles, mysterious deaths. Within just a few years, we lost Tupac, Biggie, and a myriad of other people. But specifically, Tupac and Biggie, they were both involved in unsolved drive-by shootings during the East Coast West Coast beef. And even today, those cases remain unsolved and surrounded by speculation. But as the Diddy trial came out and the Epstein stuff is still going on, it seems like we can kind of put two and two together in regards to those murders. But I'd say it does raise possibilities where artists like Biggie running were they running the game or were they just pieces on the board? So is the real meaning of life after death, after listening to it today, is it like a capsule of a dangerous era, an era where money ruled everything, where fame opened doors and morality often disappeared behind velvet ropes? Biggie might not have been, trying to expose anything at all. But I'd say through his storytelling, he accidentally documented the culture of power and excess. And, I keep repeating these words, but all of these things really mean something and they stand out. So I'm going to say he was just surrounded by that industry. And decades later, we're still trying to understand it because sometimes the crates just don't hold music. Sometimes they hold history. And sometimes they hold secrets. So, that's all I got for today. Drop down in the comments, share your opinions. Always remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm Tiana, and this is another one from Straight from the Crates. Peace.